My wife called me while I was visiting a client. She said, "I am divorcing you," and sold our apartment. Her smile quickly disappeared.
Some men cry when their marriage ends. Some beg. Some drive 4 hours back home at midnight with shaking hands and a knotted chest, rehearsing speeches in their head that they'll never deliver. Me? I said sounds good, hung up the phone, and ordered a steak. Medium rare. Glass of Malbec on the side. Tipped the waiter 30 because here's the thing about being blindsided. And I mean truly, cosmically blindsided. The kind where the ground just evaporates under your feet. There are exactly two options. You either fall, or you don't. I decided not to fall. Welcome back to Dad's Sweet Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every villain in these stories thought they were the smartest person in the room. They were not. Subscribe so you never miss a story. What Melissa Scott didn't know, couldn't have known, was that her little phone call, the one she'd clearly rehearsed, the one she delivered with that laugh I'd once found charming, and now understood was always a little cruel, had just set into motion the quietest, most methodical dismantling of her plans that she could never have imagined. She played checkers. I hadn't even told her I knew chess. The client meeting had gone well. Jenkins, a commercial real estate developer with the handshake of a man who trusts no one, had finally agreed to the revised terms after 3 weeks of back and forth. I was standing in the parking lot of a Marriott in Columbus, Ohio, loosening my tie, feeling that specific relief that only comes after a hard-won professional win. My phone buzzed. Melissa, I almost let it go to voicemail. I remember that. I almost didn't answer. Hey, I said. Benjamin. Her voice had an edge I recognized. Not the sharp edge of a fight. Something different. Performative. Staged. Everything okay? More than okay, actually. A pause. Deliberate, she'd rehearsed this. I wanted to tell you myself before you got home. Tell me what? I filed for divorce this morning. She said it the way you'd announce a haircut. Breezy, Light and I sold the apartment. We had a buyer lined up. Nathan closed on it 2 days ago. So you might want to start thinking about where you're going to sleep when you get back. I went, very still. Not frozen. Still, there's a difference. Frozen is panic. Still is something colder. Also, she continued, I've been seeing someone. For about 8 months. We're moving in together. He's got a place in Westchester. A small laugh. I didn't want to keep. Life's too short, right? I said nothing for 3 seconds. Benjamin? Did you hear me? Yeah, I said. Sounds good. She laughed. Louder this time. Like she'd expected tears and got a punchline instead. Sounds good? That's it? Drive safe, Melissa. I hung up. Then I stood in that parking lot for about 90 seconds, watching a pigeon argue with a French fry near the curb, and I thought about the apartment. Our apartment. A 2-bedroom in a building we'd bought together 6 years ago. A building whose deed had both our names on it. Both our names, and something very calm, very focused, and honestly, a little frightening settled into my chest, like a stone dropping to the bottom of a lake. She hadn't just cheated on me for 8 months. She hadn't just filed for divorce without a single conversation. She had sold jointly owned property. Without my signature, without my knowledge, without my consent. I didn't call a friend. I didn't call my mother. I called my lawyer. Claire Simmons had been my attorney for 11 years. She handled my contracts, reviewed my business deals, and once, memorably, got me out of a neighbor dispute involving a property line and a very aggressive oak tree. She answered on the second ring. Benjamin, it's late. Please tell me this is good news. Define good. I'm already reaching for wine. Talk. I told her everything. The call. The apartment. The buyer named Nathan. 8 months of affair. The divorce filing I hadn't been served yet. Claire listened without interrupting, which was unusual. Claire always interrupted. When I finished, there was a silence. Then she sold the apartment. That's what she said. Benjamin, her voice shifted. Lawyer mode. Full activation. A jointly owned property cannot be legally transferred without both owners' signature. If she completed a sale without your consent, that transaction is fraudulent. Potentially criminal. That's what I thought. Who's the buyer? Someone named Nathan. No last name yet. Okay, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I could hear her typing. Do not go home tonight. Do not engage with Melissa. Do not touch anything in that apartment, if you still have access, without documentation. I need you to get me the deed, the mortgage paperwork, any co-ownership records you have access to digitally, and I need them tonight. Already pulling them up. Of course you are. A pause. Benjamin, if this is what it looks like, it is. Then she just made the single worst financial and legal decision of her life. I found myself almost smiling. She really did. I didn't go home that night. I checked back into the Marriott, ordered that steak, and spent 4 hours on a video call with Claire going through every document I had. Bank accounts, property records, the mortgage, the co-ownership deed, registered with the county, Melissa's name, Benjamin's name. Right there in black and white. No sale had been legally finalized. The buyer, Nathan whoever he was, had apparently handed over a check, based on Melissa's assurance that she could produce a clean title. She'd lied to him too, it turned out. I didn't know it yet, but that detail, Nathan's misplaced trust, would become the most satisfying domino in the whole chain. I drove home the next afternoon. Not rushed, not frantic. I stopped for coffee, took the scenic route, listened to a podcast about the history of the Roman Empire. Seemed appropriate. When I walked through the door, Melissa was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine and the confident posture of someone who believes they've already won. She'd moved some of my things, not all of them, just enough to signal. A box by the door. Some books stacked near the hallway. She looked up. Something flickered across her face when she saw my expression, or rather, the absence of expression. "You're back," she said. "I live here. Benjamin, I thought we could be adult about— Did you sell this apartment, Melissa?" She lifted her chin. "I found a buyer, yes. Nathan's been very patient. He put down a deposit and— Did you sell this apartment?" I repeated. Quietly, slowly, "I told you I found. Because my name is on the deed." I set my bag down. Calmly. "And I didn't sign anything. So either you forged my signature, which is a felony, or you defrauded a buyer by promising a clean title you couldn't deliver, which is also a felony. Or both." I tilted my head. "Which is it?" The wine glass lowered. Nathan's attorney said. Nathan's attorney was working with the information you gave them. Which was false. I pulled out my phone, turned the screen toward her. "Claire filed for an emergency injunction this morning. The property is legally frozen pending divorce proceedings. Nathan's deposit is in limbo. His attorney is very upset." I paused. Almost as upset as Nathan, I'd imagine. Melissa stood up. "You can't sit down." She sat. I don't know why she sat. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't raised my voice once, hadn't cracked, hadn't given her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. Maybe it was the dawning realization that the man she'd dismissed with a laugh in a parking lot had spent the last 24 hours building a cage she didn't see coming. "Here's what happens next," I said. "Claire's filing for divorce on my behalf today, so your filing and mine will run concurrently, which is fun for the courts. I've already frozen our joint accounts pending asset disclosure, which is standard procedure. The apartment sale is void. Nathan will be pursuing you personally for his deposit, which I'm told is significant." I looked at her, and I've contacted a forensic accountant about the joint accounts. 8 months is a long time. There may be some interesting transactions to review. Her face had gone the color of old paper. "Benjamin, I didn't. Melissa, I picked up my bag. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days while Claire handles the procedural stuff. When I come back, it'll be with a moving company. But not to move out." I smiled for the first time. "To document every asset in this apartment for the divorce proceedings." I walked to the door. "Sounds good, by the way," I said without turning around. "As an exit line. I think it works." I closed the door behind me. What happened over the next 6 weeks, I can only describe as watching someone drown in water they poured themselves. Claire was a bloodhound. She pulled 3 years of joint account statements. What she found wasn't just infidelity. It was financial infidelity, on a scale that I genuinely hadn't anticipated. Melissa had been transferring money. Small amounts at first. $50 here, $100 there. Then larger restaurant charges in Westchester on nights she'd told me she was working late. Weekend conference hotel stays. spa visits, gifts, a watch. She'd bought her boyfriend a watch with our money, a $1,400 watch. I remember sitting across from Claire when she showed me the statement, and I laughed. Not a hurt laugh, a genuine, tired, darkly amused laugh. She bought him a watch, I said. A nice one, Claire said. Of course she did. The forensic accountant estimated just over $23,000 in marital funds had been diverted over 8 months. That number, that specific, infuriating number, would later become a cornerstone of our asset division argument. Courts tend to look dimly on a spouse who drains joint accounts to fund a secret relationship. Who knew? Meanwhile, Nathan, the buyer who'd handed over a deposit check based on Melissa's fraudulent promises, had retained his own attorney. He wasn't pursuing fraud charges. Technically, he was pursuing civil recovery. From Melissa. Personally, I found this out through Claire, who found it out through Nathan's attorney, who found it out because the legal world in our city is, as it turns out, extremely small. He wants his deposit back, Claire told me over the phone. Plus, costs. How much was the deposit? $40,000. I set down my coffee. She told him she could sell him a jointly owned property for. She told him it was hers outright, that you'd transferred your share to her. I closed my eyes. She forged a document. Benjamin, there it was. Not just deception. Not just infidelity. Not just the theft of $23,000 in marital funds. Forgery, an actual, prosecutable, criminal act. Claire had already contacted the DA's office, informally at first, exploring options, letting the facts breathe. I didn't push for charges right away. I let it sit, like a card I hadn't played yet. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply let someone know you know, and wait. I didn't know it yet, but Melissa was about to help me without realizing. Allison was Melissa's best friend, and as it turned out, the one person who actually had a conscience in this whole story. She called me out of nowhere on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer. I didn't recognize the number at first. Benjamin, it's Allison. Please don't hang up. I'm not going to hang up, Allison. I didn't know. Her voice was tight, controlled, but tight. About the apartment, about the money. She told me you'd agreed to everything. She told me you'd already worked out a deal. I swear I didn't, Allison. I kept my voice even. I believe you. A breath. She's been telling people you were checked out. That you were emotionally absent. That you didn't care about the marriage. She made it sound like you'd basically all... And now? And now I've seen the court filings. My cousin works at the county clerk's office. Allison stopped. Melissa forged your signature, Benjamin, on a property document. I know. That's not something I can just look away from. I have a house. I have a mortgage. The idea that someone could just... She exhaled. I'm willing to provide a statement about conversations I had with Melissa over the past year. Things she told me. Plans she discussed. I sat with that for a moment. Allison, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. A pause. She used me, too. She used my guest room for 2 months, while she was telling me she was at work conferences. I let him stay there. I didn't know who he... And there it was. The final detail I hadn't expected. Melissa had used her best friend's home as a staging ground for her affair. Used Allison's hospitality, her trust, her spare bedroom, all while lying to her face. I thanked Allison. I passed her contact to Claire the same night. She gave a deposition 3 weeks later. I need to tell you about Paige, because Paige is where this story gets truly cinematic. Paige was Melissa's divorce attorney. Aggressive, sharp, known for high conflict cases. She had a reputation for creative asset arguments and theatrical courtroom presence. Melissa had hired her, I was told, specifically because she was known for making husbands miserable. I mention this because Paige apparently hadn't been fully briefed on the forgery. I know this because Claire told me, with the specific, quiet delight of a person delivering information they know will wreck someone's day, that Paige had filed an asset claim on the apartment on Melissa's behalf, as if it were solely Melissa's property. In writing. In the official court record, the forgery that Melissa had attempted to pass off as legitimate now had her own attorney vouching for it. in a court filing, under the attorney's own signature. Paige, from what Claire described, was not pleased when this was brought to her attention. She withdrew the filing within 48 hours, Claire told me, and reportedly had a very direct conversation with her client. How direct? The phrase "I am not losing my license for you" was allegedly used. I put my face in my hands and laughed until my eyes watered. This was not the reaction of a broken man. This was the reaction of a man watching a Jenga tower, built by someone else's arrogance, fall in exactly the sequence he'd always known it would. The divorce hearing was 3 months after Melissa's phone call. I wore a gray suit. Conservative, unflashy. I'd learned long ago that the most intimidating thing you can present in a legal proceeding is calm. Not aggression. Not theatrics. Calm, the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to perform, because the facts perform for them. Melissa walked in wearing something expensive. Her new boyfriend, I finally had a last name, but I declined to use it because, frankly, he's irrelevant, was not present, which was wise. Paige, her attorney, looked like someone who'd been through 3 bad weeks. New counsel had been brought in to supplement her after the filing debacle. The table on their side was crowded. Expensive lawyers tend to multiply when the case is falling apart. Claire was beside me. 1 legal pad. 1 pen. Reading glasses pushed up on her head like a pilot before takeoff. The judge, a woman in her 60s with the energy of someone who had genuinely seen everything, and was perhaps mildly annoyed to be here, reviewed the filings before opening statements. She looked up, looked at Melissa's table, looked at me. "Mr. Scott," she said, "I understand your position includes allegations of fraud related to the attempted sale of jointly held property." "That's correct, Your Honor, and the Forensic Accounting Review has documented approximately $23,000 in marital fund transfers?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at Melissa's table. "Counselor, does your client contest the forensic accounting findings?" Paige, to her credit, was professionally composed. "We are prepared to discuss the context of those transactions, Your Honor." The context, the judge repeated, with the specific tone of someone who has heard that word used to describe dishonesty at least 1,000 times. "We'll get there." I didn't look at Melissa. Not once. Not during the opening statements. Not during Claire's methodical presentation of the financial documentation. Not during the reading of Allison's deposition, which, from the sharp intake of breath I heard across the room, clearly contained information Melissa hadn't anticipated being on record. I stared straight ahead. Calm, still, the eye of a storm I had built, maintained, and would not let collapse until every piece had fallen exactly where it needed to fall. Claire was brilliant. She didn't grandstand. She simply laid fact after fact in a clean, unbroken row, like tiles on a floor, until the picture was undeniable. The apartment. The forgery. The marital fund diversion. The timeline of the affair, mapped precisely against the financial transfers. The deposition from Allison detailing the conversations in which Melissa had explicitly planned the property sale before filing for divorce. Premeditation. That was the word that kept appearing. Not a spouse acting in passion. Not a marriage falling apart organically. A deliberate, calculated scheme to strip an asset and disappear. The judge recessed for lunch. I ate a sandwich at a deli around the corner. Claire ate nothing, which was how I knew she was satisfied. I won't walk you through every line of the judgment. Some of it is private. Some of it is still the subject of the civil proceedings Melissa is managing separately. But here's the broad shape of it. The apartment was awarded to me. Fully, both because of the co-ownership and because the attempted fraudulent sale was deemed evidence of bad faith conduct in the marriage dissolution. Melissa was ordered to pay back the $23,000 in marital funds with interest. She was required to provide a written acknowledgement to Nathan's attorneys regarding the fraudulent nature of the deposit transaction, acknowledgement that was subsequently used in his civil recovery suit, which he won. The forgery was referred to the Dawes office. I'll stop short of describing where that is now, not because it isn't satisfying, but because some things are better left as open questions in a story. Let your imagination sketch the shape of it. Melissa walked out of that courthouse in her expensive outfit, with a $23,000 judgment against her, a civil suit from Nathan eating into whatever she'd thought she was building in Westchester, and an apartment she'd tried to steal now sitting entirely in my name. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. The apartment is quieter now. I rearranged the furniture, took the bedroom wall from that soft gray she'd chosen, agreeable gray I think the swatch was called, which in retrospect is hilarious, and painted it a deep navy. Navy like the inside of a library at midnight. Navy like the bottom of the ocean. Navy like the absence of anything I didn't choose to keep. I kept the couch. I got rid of the artwork she'd picked. I bought a new bookshelf, floor to ceiling, and filled it with everything I'd been meaning to read for years. Jenkins, the client from Columbus, the handshake of a man who trusts no one, Jenkins, ended up referring me to 2 other developers after our deal closed. And my business has had the best year since I started it. Funny how that works. You lose the thing you thought was your foundation, and suddenly you discover the foundation was always you. Claire sent me a bottle of whiskey on the 1-year anniversary of the court ruling, a very good bottle. Aged 16 years. With a card that said only, "You handled this like a professional. C." I called her to say thank you. You know what the best part was? She said, "Tell me." She thought the phone call was her power move. She thought blindsiding you while you were out of state, laughing at you, selling the apartment out from under you. She thought all of that was the move that would break you. Yeah, but the second you said sounds good and called me instead of calling her back, Claire paused. That was the moment it was over. She just didn't know it yet. I poured 2 fingers of the whiskey into a glass. She played it perfectly, I said. If she'd come to me, even if she'd been honest about wanting out, we could have split everything cleanly. She would have had half the apartment, half the savings, a clean exit. I turned the glass in my hand. Instead, she tried to take all of it, and ended up with none of it. Greed, Claire said simply. Greed, I agreed. There was a comfortable silence. How are you, Benjamin? Actually, I thought about that. The honest answer. The one without the dry humor and the composed exterior. Good, I said, actually good. And I meant it. Not because I'd won. Not because Melissa was navigating a civil suit and a referral to the DA, and a boyfriend who, from what Allison had quietly mentioned, months back, had apparently reconsidered his Westchester plans, once the financial situation clarified itself. Not because she'd laughed on a phone in Columbus, and I'd spent the next year watching that laugh turn into something she couldn't take back. Not even because of the navy walls, or the new bookshelf, or the whiskey in a quiet apartment that was mine, entirely, legally, undeniably mine. I was good because I hadn't lowered myself. Hadn't begged, hadn't screamed, hadn't driven 4 hours in the dark with shaking hands. I'd said 2 words and let her choices do the rest. She handed me the sword. I just learned how to hold it. Some people think revenge is loud, dramatic, a confrontation in a parking lot, a screaming match, a satisfying moment of public humiliation. Real revenge is quiet. It's a phone call you make while your steak is still warm. It's a filing that lands before she's even stopped laughing. It's the look on someone's face when they realize that the man they dismissed, the man they called boring, checked out, easy to leave, was 3 moves ahead the entire time. Melissa got everything she deserved. Not a single piece of it came from my hands. That's the thing about people who overplay their hand. They do the work for you. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.